I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 4th, 2020 virtual Township of Springfield Planning Board meeting. Adequate notice has been given in accordance with the Sunshine Law. Notice was published on April 14th, 2020
Not quite sure why I'm not showing up.
in the Star Ledger, the official newspaper for the Township of Springfield, and posted on the Annex Building on April 15th, 2020. For any members of the public that are on, please go to the Township website. There's instructions on how to ask a question during the public portion of this meeting. Let's take a salute to the flag. I'm going to hold the flag up. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Wow. I just realized Jen Law has a flag right behind her. Okay. That's funny. All right, so welcome everyone. If everyone could take themselves off mute, we're going to do a quick roll call, so it'll be easier. We'll wait a second. So everyone off mute. Go ahead, Jen. Ms. Law.
Committeeman Rick Huber. Committeeman Rick Huber.
Yes.
Mr. David Barnett.
Here.
Mr. Andrew Schwartz.
Present.
Mr. Jerry Fernandez.
Here.
Ms. Sylvianne Grzybowski.
Here.
Mr. Aaron Loffer.
Here.
Mr. Brian Brendel.
Here.
Ms. Marissa Ruggiero.
Here.
Mr. Scott Wishna.
Here.
Vice Chair Sharon Kessel.
Here.
And Chairman Jeff Tiger.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. Okay. So the first action this board has tonight, last week we heard application 11-2015. That was Morris Avenue LLC, our redevelopment project. I think the board acted favorably on approving it. There's been a resolution that was emailed to our board. The board had lots of questions, concerns. There was lots of changes to the resolution. Did anyone have any further changes or concerns?
Chairman,
None. Sorry,
Mr. Webster has his hand up. I don't know if he needs to speak with you, or there's two people in the waiting room with their hands up. I just don't know.
Okay, let's put Mr. Webster in because this affects Mr. Webster.
And there's also Mr. Watson. I don't know if he needs to speak.
I don't know who Mr. Watson is, but Mr. Webster, let's bring him in.
Watson is with the applicant for tonight.
Okay, we'll leave him. Leonardo, is there any questions or concerns?
I just wanted to say, I didn't see, I guess, the final changes. I got something maybe Thursday night or early Friday morning. So I just wanted to make sure it's the same one you guys are voting on.
That's correct. The only additions that are to the resolution is that there will be an addition added in that Mayor Chris Capides appeared before the planning board as a member of the public and thanked them. Whatever was said by him will be the resolution.
And I also wanted to let Mr. Huber know that I put on my bow tie for tonight.
Like the tie, I'm going to say it.
he did put the bow tie on. All right.
You must have another board to be in front of.
All right. So if everyone can go off mute for the board, and if I can entertain someone to make a motion to approve the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 11-2015 S Morrison Central LLC for final site plan redevelopment project.
Second. So Sylvia seconds.
Sylvia second. Can I have a roll call?
Mr. Barnett.
Yes.
Ms. Grzybowski.
Yes.
Committeeman Huber.
Yes, goes to the bow tie.
Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Loffer.
Yes.
Mr. Brendel.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel.
Yes.
And Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So I will sign the resolution and drop it off at Town Hall.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
If everyone also stays off mute, leaves off mute, we have a quick ordinance. The governing body entertained an ordinance for a pipeline that has been discussed. None of this pipeline was planned for Springfield anyway, but there's a proposed ordinance that they've sent to us to make sure it's consistent with the master plan. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to give us a very brief overview of it, and then open it up to the board for any questions, and then for an approval to instruct our board secretary to send a note to the clerk that it's consistent with the master plan. So, Mr. Disco?
Yep, it's a rather perfunctory. Was an ordinance drafted by Craig Dowd, the municipal attorney, who took it from other municipalities. Again, it was being preemptive in that we wanted to be prepared in case a pipeline proposal came into the community, which none is proposed. It's just 8 pages. It's got definitions. It's got some environmental restrictions. So, but it does have regular language regarding state and federal laws. So there's details if you want to read it, but I mean, it's just really for the township to be prepared and was being proactive, quite frankly.
Perfect. And you believe it's consistent with the master plan?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to quickly open up to the board. Jerry, any questions?
I mean, honestly, I got to tell you, I just haven't looked at it. So I don't know why I didn't see it before. But no questions right now.
Okay. Mr. Whitman?
No questions.
Mr. Schwartz?
None, thank you.
Mrs. Kessel?
No questions.
Mr. Barnett? David? You're on mute.
I know, I was using the space bar to unmute. It works, by the way, everyone. You can temporarily mute and unmute me. But I have no questions.
Thank you. Thanks for that little introduction. Mr. Cooper?
No.
Sil?
No questions.
Mr. Brendel?
No questions.
Aaron? Marissa?
No questions.
All right, so then I'd like to motion to instruct our board secretary to send a note to the clerk saying that the board finds this consistent, this ordinance consistent with the master plan.
Okay, I'd like to make, what would I say for that?
I'd
Not,
like to have our board secretary send a notice to the clerk.
okay, I'd like to make a resolution to have, no, not a resolution. I'd like to make a motion to make, allow our board secretary send the ordinance to the township committee?
The clerk that it's
To the clerk.
that the plan
Ordinance,
finds it consistent with the master plan.
okay, for ordinance 2020-11.
Any second?
Second.
Can we have a quick roll call, Jen?
Ms. Grzbowski?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel?
Yes.
Committeeman Huber?
Yes.
Mr. Barnett?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Laufer?
Yes.
Mr. Brendel?
Yes.
Chairman Tiger?
Yes.
Motion passes. I'll send to
Perfect. Okay, our next application, wait one sec, is application 3-2020S. This is Evergreen Diagnostic LLC, Bella Ford, 35 Stern Avenue, block 3101, lot 9. If anyone recalls last time we had a similar application where there was a building. They subdivided the lot off. It seems to me that Evergreen Diagnostics is the buyer that is going to be proposing a building on this site. So that will be the application tonight before us. It's a preliminary and site plan. I believe it has no variance. It just has 2 design waivers, and we'll talk through that. Mr. Schwartz?
Chair, yeah, but Mr. Chair, before you get to the actual application, as the law firm by which I'm employed represents the applicant, I'm going to be recusing myself in this matter.
I'm very disappointed.
I am sure
Hi,
you are.
Andrew.
Andrew, are you going to be leaving the meeting?
I am going to be leaving the meeting, yes.
All right, so as of officially right now, bud?
I'm on my way out the door.
Well, so let the record reflect that Mr. Schwartz at 5:40 left the meeting for a conflict.
Okay.
Yeah, but don't
Thank
leave
you.
your house.
Yes, don't leave your house. Okay, so let's have the applicant's attorney. I believe Merrill is the applicant's attorney.
Yes.
I'm trying, there you are.
Can you hear me? I just want to,
Absolutely.
everything good? Okay. Good evening. My name is Meryl Goncher, and I'm a member of the firm of Sills, Cummis, and Gross, and we are, as you indicated, attorneys this evening for the applicant Evergreen Diagnostics, Inc. We have submitted an application. We're before you this evening for preliminary and final site plan approval for property located at 35 Stern Avenue, identified as Lot 9 in Block 3101 on the tax maps of the Township of Springfield. We are requesting this approval in connection with the proposed construction of a two-story, approximately 13,732 square foot light manufacturing facility with associated parking, other site improvements, including lighting, landscaping, and drainage improvements. The facility is going to be operated, as I indicated, for light manufacturing. The product is targeted pharmaceutical drugs for cancer patients. The property is in the I-20 zone. The applicant met with the board's technical review committee to discuss this use and confirm that jurisdiction was properly before this board, as this was in fact a permitted use. As you indicated, this property was before the board recently on the application of LL Balfour LLC, the owner of the property, who sought subdivision approval to create two lots from the previous one lot. You have adopted a memorializing resolution, and that is in the process of compliance to perfect the subdivision. And as your chair indicated, once the subdivision is perfected, it is the objective and plan of this applicant to purchase the subdivided lot to develop the project before you. We had initially sought a variance with regard to impervious coverage. Your ordinance has two different types of impervious, two different sections. As we will show you with an exhibit that was submitted in advance of the hearing, we have worked with your engineer to find an alternative which we believe addresses that impervious issue with the provision of pervious pavers in portion of the parking lot. That's like a tongue twister. And that will, we believe, eliminate the need for that variance. That will leave two other types of relief exceptions or design standard waivers. One with regard to landscaping, specifically that required interior to the parking lot at the facility, and the other with regard to the width of the driveway, creating access to the parking lot from the street. As a matter of housekeeping, we have served and published notice. We have submitted proof of that service, and we trust that that is acceptable and jurisdiction is properly before the board at this time.
Yeah, can I interrupt you, Meryl?
Of course.
Jen, Glenn, have you reviewed said notice and find it acceptable?
Jen, did you take a look at
I
it?
did. It was fine.
Okay, and let's just check, Mr. Chairman, let's just check with the, and see, is there any public out there that would have any objections as to the notice or as to anything going forward in the fact that the application has been deemed complete?
Actually, Apu, is there anyone else on the meeting waiting? Just out of curiosity.
8 attendees, including our live stream, so 7 others.
Okay.
All right, just, does anybody in the public have any objections to us proceeding with this application at this time? Speak now or forever hold your peace, and just raise your hand and we'll deal with it. I don't want Meryl having to waste any time.
Don't see any questions.
I'm
So,
seeing no hands and no Q&A, so.
All right, so Meryl, the application has been deemed complete. There's no procedural objections. There's no anythings. So I think that helps you with your roadmap a little bit.
Thank you. We will present witnesses this evening, starting with James Cook, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Evergreen. And he will address some of the comments in your consultant's review letters, including operation, number of employees, and parking demand. We also have with us Tom Quinn of EKA Associates, our licensed professional engineer, Charlie Johnson of Bergman Architectural Associates, our licensed architect, and finally Jim Watson of EKA, a licensed professional planner who will deal with the 1 or 2 remaining exceptions or design waivers. And we think we likely have a way to address the landscape issue, which we can discuss with you as we get further along in the application. Unless the board has any questions for me, we would like to call and have sworn Mr. Cook, the CEO.
Sure. Glenn, will you swear Mr. Cook in?
Absolutely. Mr. Cook,
Yes.
please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, he's all yours, Merrill.
Thank you. All right. James, could you just advise the board what your relationship is, your position with the applicant? And then briefly, if you will, go through what kind of company it is and what it proposes to do at this site.
Certainly. So my name is James Cook. I'm a resident of nearby Chatham. I'm founder and CEO of Evergreen Theragnostics, which is a company focused on targeted pharmaceuticals for cancer care. What we plan to do at this site is light manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. We'll have a team of between 16 to 28 people working both in a clean room manufacturing environment, doing manufacturing under FDA regulations, and then we'll have some office support staff, including myself. The drugs that we manufacture belong to a class of pharmaceuticals called radiopharmaceuticals that use a small amount of short-lived radioactivity to detect and treat cancer. The process works such that we receive short-lived raw material on a weekly basis. We process it within 1 to 2 days, and then we ship it on a just-in-time basis to hospitals around North America. The shipments are done via common courier like FedEx, or also with commercial airlines. So there's no particularly special shipping. It's done through common courier in accordance with DOT regulations. Radiopharmacies and radiopharmaceutical manufacturing facilities like this are fairly common. There are around 400 throughout the U.S. There are around a dozen here in New Jersey, including in Milburn, Livingston, Somerset, just thinking of nearby towns. Our normal operating hours will be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., although we may have some small teams come in early in the morning in order to get production started. Those would be teams of 4 to 5 people. And we may have some off-cycle manufacturing where we need to do a production run at night. Although for the time being, most employees will work during the day. 24-hour production in the future is possible, but it's not foreseen at this point. We will not generate any significant noise. The production process is more or less a semi-manual process in the clean rooms, and all non-household waste is disposed of in accordance with state and federal regulations. And I'd be happy to go in deeper on any aspects, but that's a summary of our operations.
Marilyn, anything further?
No, we're guided that this is really to be able to answer some of the questions in Mr. Disco's letter about operation, the number of employees, and how we calculated, how that determined our requirement for parking. We're at your disposal if you have any questions for us.
Perfect. I'm going to open it. I don't have any questions. Mr. Disco?
I'm good with the description of the operation, so.
Okay.
I think it was important to make the board feel safe, that this is a safe operation, and that it's a manufacturing-based operation as opposed to an office-based. Those were the gist of the comments.
Exactly. Mr. Hughes, Keenan?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from you. So at this point, I'm going to ask the board to go off mute, and I'm going to do a quick in order. Jerry, Mr. Fernandez?
No, I'm okay. Thank you. No questions.
Mr. Wishna?
Yeah, so Mr. Cook used the term short-lived raw materials in reference to what I felt may have been something to do with radioactivity. Can you kind of go into a little more detail as to what that actually means for the layperson?
Yeah, so most radioactivity is in fact short-lived. So in the popular media, we typically hear about long-lived radioactivity like plutonium and uranium, and this is let's say totally different class of materials. Radioactivity that's used in medical applications is short-lived, so it typically has a half-life of In some cases 1 hour, in some cases 2 hours, in some cases 7 days. If you have a product with a half-life of 7 days, it means every 7 days half of it's gone, because the material is decaying back to its natural state. So every 7 days half of it's gone, and what it means is we're dealing with melting ice cubes essentially. So we receive material that has radioactivity, and we need to process it quickly and then get it into a patient in a hospital within 2 days, because otherwise too much of the radioactivity has gone down, and the treating power for the tumors is insufficient. So this is what I mean. So there's no, in our business, there's no such thing as finished goods warehousing. You make it, you ship it immediately to the end user. To the extent you have any that hasn't been used to make a dose of medicine, then you basically store it in decay. So you store it until it decays away, until there is no longer radioactivity, or you dispose of it through a third-party waste special service.
Okay. Anything further, Mr. Wishna?
No, but I mean, I feel like the board might want to hear a little more about safety measures that take place within the building. And that may come up later on. So I'll pause my questioning.
No, Scott, I actually agree with you. Mr. Cook, would you address that a little bit more depth and with Mr. Disco?
Sure. Should I address it now? Or?
Yeah, address it now, but Mr.
Certainly.
Disco, weigh in.
Certainly. So the facility is governed by, first of all, it's governed by the FDA, and the FDA is mainly concerned about patient safety. And then it's also governed by the NJDEP, and the NJDEP regulates in the state of New Jersey on behalf of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So facility must pass inspection and must pass a lot of requirements before you even possess any radioactivity. That's governed by NJDEP. We're also governed by OSHA, of course, and the Department of Transportation for any shipments. All procedures in the facility regarding handling of radioactive material are highly, or let's say completely written out, and then must be followed. So you can have very little deviation from anything in a written procedure. And it's operated like a drug manufacturing facility in terms of the degree of regulation. Material comes in, it's only handled by people who have had proper handling with proper training and handling of radioactive materials. It's stored in a lead shielded space in case you would have a spill. So essentially this material, so the radioactive materials that I'm talking about essentially can't harm you unless they get on your skin or they get very close to your body. So you have, of course, procedures in case of a spill, which is very, very unlikely for a number of reasons. But let's say you would spill it in a room. The first step is you walk to the other side of the room, and then you're safe, quite frankly, because the radioactive emissions are only a very short distance. The second thing you do, you quarantine the room, and then you come back in when it's when the level of radioactivity has died down, and you clean. You use solutions to clean that area.
So how do we make sure that we don't have like a Chernobyl on our hands?
So Chernobyl. So the materials that we use are not volatile, are not. It's not possible to have a Chernobyl. So Chernobyl, the case in Chernobyl is where you have uranium, which is very different than what we have. What we have, so essentially there's no way you couldn't make a dirty bomb with any medical isotopes. It's just impossible. It's physically impossible. You have people who work in the facility every day who wear dosimeters, including pregnant women. So if a woman is pregnant, she has a bit of a lower dose limit and would wear a dosimeter on her stomach. And the amount of dose that each person gets is measured over time. And in a year, each person is allowed to have as much dose as half of the limit for home radon gas that we're all exposed to, or about 10 transatlantic flights, or about 2.5 dental x-rays. And this is monitored and tracked on a weekly basis.
So, Mr. Disco, I'm going to turn it to you from a standpoint, from the board's perspective. I mean, is there safety measures that everyone's governed from the DEP and some of the other organizations that he's mentioned in order to protect Springfield? I mean, like, what safety? Can anyone steal these things and then do something with it?
No. And I would say these are all very good concerns and issues to bring up. Mr. Cook was very proactive and approached the township on his own without the benefit of the property owner, and we had a TRC meeting. Keenan was in that, Bob Herbert, the zoning officer, myself, Administrator Basicolo, and all of these concerns that you asked, we asked in a very hour-long, detailed method. And we were very comfortable that the radioisotope issue is not as what could be feared. The handling of it is in a very secure manner. They do have a floor plan with some rooms. Maybe the architect would be able to get into that later. The disposal, and it's all, as I understand it, from both ends, coming and going, from routine trucking. There's no specialized trucking. Is that correct, Mr. Cook, even when it leaves your facility?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I don't, on initial, you get a little nervous on something like this. It's unknown, but I think we vetted it fairly well, and I'm very comfortable with it. And certainly the other members who were in the TRC could speak to that as well. But these are all concerns that planning board members should have instantly, and I think we're at a stage, and based upon the testimony, that we're comfortable with it.
All right, so that's good. I think that should satisfy Mr. Kushna. Mr. Barnett, I mean, you're our chief medical expert in what you do. So any questions?
No, in fact, completely coincidentally, I actually know a little bit more about this stuff today than I probably did about a month ago. And, the key to us in listening to this, you hear the word radioactive, and like the chairman, you think of Chernobyl, but this is nothing even remotely close or even comparable to anything like that. So let's just make sure not to become alarmist because we hear certain words. As long as this facility is run according to FDA and DEP guidelines, as well as several other regulatory frameworks that Mr. Cook and his business are responsible for, then there is absolutely no harm, or really, I think there's no more risk to this type of business than many of the other businesses we have in town, including landscapers with fertilizer and things like that. So I have no problems with it at all.
Mr. Huber, Committeeman Huber?
All right, no problem.
Quick question. The amount transportation, the amount of materials coming in and coming out on a given day.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of volume are we talking about?
Most shipments will be done with let's say box trucks or box size trucks, so like a normal FedEx truck, and you might have on an individual truck, maybe you have 24 individual boxes go on a FedEx truck. And depending on how business turns out, maybe we would have a few of those trucks during the day. I think it won't be significant from a traffic standpoint, and in terms of, it would be, the trucks having radioactivity in them is a standard thing. Like the FedEx drivers are used to that, and it's similar to what you would have coming in and out of a hospital or a medical center.
Okay, so I'm just a little concerned because there is some residential areas near there, and in case there's a lot of traffic or God forbid a traffic accident, I was wondering if that would create a problem.
So all materials are shipped in Department of Transportation regulated containers. So that means they're tested, they're drop tested, they're tested to make sure that, you know, in case of an accident, there won't be any spill from any of those containers. And that's, yeah, so that's the best description of it. You know, I'm not aware of any incidents. I mean, there are literally, you know, 10 million or so procedures around this country every year of, you know, where radioactivity is injected in a human being. And I've never heard of, you know, any major shipping accidents or, you know, something like that.
Okay.
Okay, actually, Marissa.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so seeing none, for the public's portion of this, Mr. Cook, please don't leave because we're going to do it at the end. If there's any public, I'm going to open up to, for all of the witnesses on the application rather than doing each one. So please just hang out and stay there.
Okay.
Meryl, what would be your next witness?
Mr. Quinn, engineering.
Mr. Quinn, you could take yourself off mute, please. I know you've been before the board, but Glenn will swear you in.
Thank you.
Mr. Quinn, very good. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth proceedings before the board tonight? So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Mr. Quinn, you're a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And your license is valid as of tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you have appeared on other occasions before this board, and they accepted your testimony. Is
I
that
think
correct?
they have.
Chairman,
Yes.
I have more.
Anyway, I don't think the board has any concerns with Mr. Quinn. He's been before us a few times, so we'll move forward.
Thank you very much.
Concerns? Seeing none, we'll move forward.
Thank you for accepting him as an expert in the field of engineering. Can you quickly just tell the board what your responsibilities were in connection with this application, and then please orient the board and any members of the public as to where the property is by street and anything else you think would be helpful?
Sure. All right. So again, for the record, we're talking about a parcel that was subdivided from a parent parcel, lot 9, back this past January. So the subject lot is lot 9.01. It's about a 35,000 square foot portion of the existing lot 9, previous lot 9, that was cleaved off to create a conforming lot with lot frontage on Commerce Street. And as you heard the attorney say earlier, it's located squarely in the I-20 zone, surrounded on all sides by properties also in the I-20 zone.
Excuse me a second. I love listening and looking at Mr. Quinn, but are we going to put any exhibits up that we can kind of just look at? It'll be much easier on the public. It'll be much more, it'll be much quicker also. So if we could maybe have the exhibits put up as he's talking to them, that way we're just seeing it. We only have to go through it once.
Which exhibit do you need first?
Can we put up, how about the site plan, which is sheet 1 in the plan set that was originally submitted?
That's the cover sheet. Basically, it shows, as I just indicated, the location of the lot as it relates to the I-20 zone. So what I typically would do is I would jump through sheet 1, which is at the end of the sheet, the boundary and topo survey, just to walk through the public on what it looks like now. So all the way at the end of the set. Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Thank you. So again,
and just for the record, let me just jump in. I don't mean, this is the plan set that was submitted with our application. And I don't know, Glenn, what your process is, but these are part of the record with no need to mark them as exhibits if they're part of the file. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, and all I would ask is that Mr. Quinn just read which sheet number it is, Merrill, and then I think we're fine.
Terrific.
Now, the entire plan set, the site plan set, should bear a date on the cover sheet of 3/16/2020. That's the latest set of the site plans that were reviewed. The sheet we're looking at right now would be, again, the boundary and topographic survey. That sheet bears a date of 8/21/19.
Mr. Quinn, don't worry about that. Just tell us what
Okay.
sheet it is. We already accepted it as the packet that was submitted as part of the application. If there's any
Okay.
deviation or any special exhibit, let's keep it really simple. So this is that sheet, and you've already explained to us what's out there, and it's a vacant piece. So
Great.
that's
Right.
fine.
A couple of other things I would just put on the record that are specific to this piece of property. There is a pretty decent grade change. The highest point of this property is out just a few feet off the right-of-way of Commerce Street.
Oh.
Thereby, the property falls off about 5.5 feet towards the rear of the property. There are also a few monitoring wells that are really the only other notable feature that played into our design, eventual design. So now we can go to site sheet 2, which is the second sheet in the set, and is the first sheet that shows the improvements.
Mr. Quinn, I'm going to
There you
interrupt.
Perfect.
I'm going to interrupt a little just for a second because in the hopes I can kind of expedite this. You saw Mr. Disco's letter dated March 27th.
I did.
Did you have any questions? Did you agree with everything in the letter and have no concerns?
I don't have any concerns. Again, I would leave it to Mr. Disco, but there were some things he had requested testimony on.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go through that, but I don't, by and large, have any problem.
Let's focus on those items that Mr. Disco is talked about, as well as the questions with the driveway being 4 feet shorter,
Okay.
and the landscaping discussion about the spaces versus the landscape design waiver.
Okay, I know that our attorney's going to get twitchy if I don't at least put a little testimony on record about the site. So I'll step through this quickly.
Okay.
So, all right, essentially with the site plan, the plan you're looking at right now, sheet 2, it depicts the building. The building occupies about a third of the site. It's about a 12,000 square foot building. We have a 20-foot wide driveway along the left side as you're looking at the drawing, or the westerly side of the building. That 20-foot wide driveway access is supposed to be 24-foot by ordinance, but in order to keep the 5-foot offset from the property line that the township requires, and to leave some room between the building and the other curb line, we've decided to pull that driveway down to 20 feet. Once you get inside the parking area, we've got a total of 31 parking stalls. We've got lighting. The thing to note here is that in this particular plan, we have the 3 variances. We have the variance for the 20-foot wide driveway, which we'd like to maintain. This particular plan shows an impervious coverage of about 83%. We will be introducing an exhibit. We've worked with your professionals to provide sufficient porous pavement to bring the impervious cover down to about 70.5%. So we won't be requiring a variance for that. The other variance, aside from the driveway width or the design waiver, apart from the driveway width, is the interior landscaping. Your ordinance requires 5%. The current plan shows 1.1%. If we were to eliminate 3 of the on-site stalls to go from 31 to 28, we could comply with that 5%, but the applicant would really rather keep the stalls on site rather than have on-site off-site parking on the street. So we will be requesting the design waiver for the interior landscaping at 1.1%, and we're requesting the drive access way to 20 feet as opposed to 24 feet. I would note too, wherever there's a parking stall adjacent to the drive aisle, those aisles are fully complying 24-foot wide. The only area where we've brought the drive access down to 20 feet is where we did not have parking on either side of that access.
You have let's talk about the driveway part, because I think that Mr. Disco can do it. There's an exhibit. I think maybe if you put that up, that I know that our professional reviewed, that shows the circulation and it works. Do you want to put that up, Apu?
That would be, you'd be near probably sheet 7 or 8 on this.
The same package?
It should be in the same package, yeah.
And while you're doing that, while he's putting that up, Mr. Disco, do you want to, I understand you reviewed it?
I think what we're talking about, let's make sure we're talking about, are you talking about the plan that shows the pervious pavement?
No,
That-
the,
okay.
the circulation one.
Keep
The
going.
Truck,
Yeah, I think that was a separate admission. That one may have to be marked. That was a separate submission.
correct.
Oh, you know what, man? Yeah, it might not be in this package. It was, it might have
It was
been.
one of the pages, the sheets that were provided on Friday. If we can put that up.
This is the one with the fire truck and the other truck?
Correct.
Yeah, there's two separate ones, one with a fire vehicle and another with a delivery vehicle.
One moment.
While he's locating that, Mr. Quinn, can you provide some testimony on that, and then Mr. Disco can add some color. That way, the board understands the extent of what the design waiver is.
Sure. So when we were looking at the driveway width, we know that the minimum driveway, oftentimes in many towns that we work in, the minimum driveway width where there is no parking aisle to contend with, the minimum driveway width is, yes, thank you. The minimum driveway width is 20 feet. We also know that NFPA has recently revised their standards to require a minimum 20-foot driveway where 18 feet was typically allowed. So we knew we wanted to go to 20. That was the minimum we could do. And we essentially ran the aerial fire vehicle that we have in our library to make sure that truck could maneuver in and out of the site comfortably with a 20-foot wide drive. That's the exhibit you're looking at currently right now. So essentially that's the aerial ladder. It comes into the site. It pulls around in front of the building and then can back out without traversing any of the parking stalls. So the parking lot is fully able to maneuver the fire vehicle. He can't circulate all the way around without backing up. So he can't continually pull around and pull out head first. He has to do basically a K-turn, and that's what's depicted here.
Okay, what I'd like to do is have this exhibit marked as, I think this is the first exhibit, so we're going to mark it as A1. It's going to be entitled E-1 HP 100 Aerial Fire Truck Maneuvering Exhibit, prepared by Thomas Quinn, and with a date on it of 4/15/2020. Okay, Mr. Quinn, sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all. Not the second maneuvering exhibit, the one following this, was meant to depict. We discussed with the applicant what the largest sized delivery vehicles that were apt to come to the site, and they told us that it's typically the FedEx truck, as you heard, but on occasion they'll have a larger FedEx or UPS truck, a 30-foot single box truck. So that's what this maneuver is essentially depicting: a 30-foot single unit truck pulling in around the southerly side of the building, where it can back into the loading area immediately to the southeast corner of the building. And then it's able to pull around the southerly side of the drive aisle and back out the access aisle.
Okay, I think Mr. Quinn, that's a good testimony on that issue. As far as if we can go to the landscaping concern, I think
Sure.
that from the owner's testimony, he said he had about 30 or so employees at some given time. So the space is obviously 30 is more important, is important, more potential in the landscape. I understand that there was some discussion with the engineers that there would be whatever trees that weren't installed would be some sort of contribution to the township tree fund in order to, balance out what trees that weren't on this site be put somewhere else. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That was discussed.
Okay, and that, Mr. Disco, can I get you on? And Apu, you could take this down. I'd like to, this way we could see Mr. Disco and members. Mr. Disco, are you comfortable with the circulation and you'll put together a contribution of whatever trees, plantings that would be required?
I am comfortable. The 24-foot is a requirement for every parking lot in every non-residential district. Mr. Quinn's given you the testimony as to why the 20 will work. There's no parking associated with the 20-foot leg of it. And the templates show that the vehicles will function.
Perfect.
And I'm comfortable with the assessment on the 3 parking space, maintaining that as opposed to losing them for the landscaping. Commerce Street has a lot of on-street parking by the other users of that. We certainly don't want to exacerbate that in any way, so I think it's prudent in this case to have the 31 parking spaces as opposed to the conforming 28.
Perfect. Mr. Hughes, anything from you on this, from the engineer?
I don't have much to add. I mean, I would say I think this is one of those balancing situations where you're trying to find the right solution based on the needs of a specific user. And I think what they're proposing makes sense in terms of the parking supply, knowing that, you know, we have some undersupply in the surrounding area. This is what makes sense for the site. So I have no further questions on this issue.
Perfect.
And we have looked at, you know, we're happy to comply with your tree fund ordinance under section 28.5.2 to, you know, make up for what is not going to fit in order to permit the parking that we're requiring.
Perfect. Okay, and for the record, if we did require you to, you had enough spots anyway under our ordinance, so it's not a variance issue. This is what the benefits.
That is correct. This would be merely an exception under your ordinance or a design standard. And as indicated, these are excess spaces that we just want to make sure we're providing adequate spaces for the employees and the use at the site.
Perfect. All right. If there's nothing further, I'm going to open up to the board for some questions and concerns that they have of your engineer. Jerry, Mr. Fernandez?
I'm all good. No questions.
Perfect. Mr. Wishna?
You know, I didn't catch where the trash dumpsters were going to be on site and whether the circulation plan addressed whether garbage trucks can make that same run.
Mr. Quinn, can you answer that for Mr. Wishna?
I certainly can. And I think the trash situation is morphed a little bit since we first started this. My understanding was that they were going to have an interior trash room and they were going to walk trash out. And I think as the program developed, the building program developed, it was kind of decided that that wouldn't be pragmatic for all trash. They're going to have whatever environmentally hazardous trash, or any of that product will be dealt with specially. But with regard to cardboards and like lunch trash and typical trash, there is going to be a small enclosure in the striped area adjacent to the loading space that we depict on the site. That's not currently shown on your plan, but the latest discussion has been that there'll be a creation of a small enclosed dumpster area at the rear of the building adjacent to that loading.
All right, and you'll have to work with Mr. Disco to make sure it's enclosed properly and it's not going to create any more impervious or anything like that from that standpoint.
No, it's in an impervious area,
Yeah.
So that's not an issue.
Okay.
And so,
No, and then my assumption is that the trash pickup in this zone typically is not during business hours. So the concern I had was 30-foot box truck and garbage truck all competing for the same space.
Yeah.
This plan does not work for that.
No, there won't be a concurrence of those two. They operate at totally different times.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So from site plan perspective, those are my only questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Kessel?
No, our professionals answered all of my questions that I had, so I'm fine.
Same thing as mine. Mr. Barnett?
I thought I had a great question because I didn't see a dumpster on the plans. Beat me to it.
All right.
Mr. Huber?
Yeah, I might have missed it. Did we submit these to our fire department for approval?
Mr. Disco?
It was, had no comments. Sorry, I know that's. Disco.
They
We had no comments?
No.
Thank you.
That's not unroutine. That's normal.
Sil?
No question, sorry.
Mr. Brendel?
I don't know if it's a question, more of a concern, or maybe it's a question for Mike, but given that it's a 20-foot versus 24-foot, and you said there wasn't a lot of area parking around there, do we have to specify anything for that 20-foot area, maybe like no parking signs or whatever?
Good
in case
point.
the parking lot does get full and an employee needs to pull up and park on that right away there or anything. Do we need to do anything there, or are you good with that?
I think you can react to that if it happens. I don't think you want to have sign pollution and start striping yellow things and doing it. If the fire was silent on it, that they didn't need it as a fire lane and there's no intended parking, you're okay. 24-foot standard, remember, is also geared up for encompassing retail uses. This is going to be a low intensity driveway use. Other than the 1 to 3 box trucks, it's just going to be your employees coming lunchtime and leaving. So,
right. Okay. All right, good. Okay, Jeff.
Aaron?
No questions at this time.
Okay. How's outer space, Aaron?
It's pretty good.
Marissa?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, so Mr. Quinn, don't go anywhere because we open it up to the public. We're going to have you around in case there's any other questions or the board has any other questions. So, Merrill, I don't know if since we discussed with the two issues from a planning standpoint, I don't know if it's necessarily we need the planner to testify unless you're insistent upon it. I'd rather hear from the architect so he can tell us a little bit about the building and what it looks like.
Yeah, can I just ask a question? We moved through this quickly with Mr. Quinn. I got the notation. Did we mark the exhibit? Did I miss it with the porous or the pervious pavers that was submitted? That was not part of the original plan set that we discussed, and that's one of Mr. Quinn's documents. So if we could just get that in before we excuse him, that was the sheet that's not part of the plan set that is here though, was submitted.
When was it submitted? The second round on Friday?
The same time as the 2 truck turning template plans, yes.
All right, Glenn?
Well, Michael, is that just in response to some comments that you made, Michael?
Yes.
So do we need actual?
That's what eliminates the variance though.
Well, it's only a waiver. It's only an exception.
No, the pervious pavement.
It is lot coverage.
Yeah.
All right, let's put it up on the screen so at least everybody sees it.
Right. I mean, that eliminates the variance. So
all right, I got it. Okay. Let's put it up, please. Apu.
There you go.
Yeah, so that'll be
okay. So essentially, just if anybody else is looking at this, the way porous pavement is essentially recommended in lower traffic areas. So you'll notice we have some cross hatching in all of the parking stall areas. Those are the areas intended to encompass porous pavement. You notice there is no porous pavement in the loading dock area or in any of the drive aisles.
Okay, and let's identify this sheet, please, Mr. Quinn. What is it?
This
going to be
This is a site plan exhibit reduced impervious cover.
With a date last revised, what?
Yeah, I can't read that.
It looks 4/29/20.
Thank you.
All right.
I actually have my desktop. I was going to show it on desktop. But...
All right, and this will be A2 impervious coverage with pavers. Okay, that's fine.
Were both of the template exhibits marked as one? We had the truck turning and
that was all on one doc. That was all on one document, I believe, Merrill.
Well, was that one? It was 2 separate sheets, but
I only saw one sheet on my thing. So the answer to your question, Merrill, is we'll mark them as A1 consisting of 2 sheets. How's that?
Perfect. That's great. Thank you.
All right, Apu, let's go back to take this off. And so Merrill, I don't think the board needs to hear from the planner because I think Mr. Quinn adequately addressed the 2 concerns for the design waivers. We've eliminated the variance now for lot coverage. So I think it's more of what does this building look like? Let's tell and show the board what that does. So let's get the architect to give us a little bit of an overview of it. And I know he had some discussion with Mr. Hughes, so they can talk about that as well.
Okay, if we can get our architect sworn. Charlie, if you...
Where are you, Charles?
I don't see Charlie.
He needs to be unlocked. Somebody has to let him in.
Yeah. Apu?
think I have the right person.
Charlie Johnsrud.
Ah, there he is.
Where are you, Charlie?
Oh, I see him. He's on the bottom, but he's
Well,
not.
I want him front and center. Say something, Charlie, so you go big screen.
Charlie, you're on mute. It looks like you're on mute, Charlie.
Hello?
There
Charlie,
we
are you on?
I'm here, yes.
We're not seeing you. Have you got your video open or are you?
My video.
There you
How's
go.
that?
There you are.
All right.
All right, Charlie, let's have Mr. Keene swear you in.
Charles, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board on this virtual hearing this afternoon? So help you God.
I do.
What's your full name?
Charles Johnsrud,
Spell your last name, Charles.
Johnsrud.
You're a licensed professional architect in the state of New Jersey, sir?
Yes, I am.
And by whom are you employed?
I'm now employed by Bergman Architectural Associates.
And what do you do for Bergman?
I'm a principal in the firm, and I oversee projects. This project with Mr. Cook is a similar project to one I worked on when I had my own firm a number of years ago.
You regularly have appeared in the past before boards and offered expert testimony as a licensed professional architect in the state of New Jersey, sir?
I have regularly, may be generous, but I have appeared.
Okay, and numerous times, let's put it that way. How's
Fair
that?
enough.
And your license is still valid as of tonight?
It is.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Yeah, I don't think the board would have any concerns. So, sir, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief overview of what the buildings looks like, and at the same time address some of the concerns that are in Mr. Hughes's letter, and I understand you and him had a conversation this past to kind of make some changes to the building. So if you can discuss that.
Yes, earlier I spoke with him. So the building is a very specific functional building. It's designed to house the radiopharmaceutical production operations that Evergreen will be making. And so it's arranged in a way to be as efficient as possible. We've cited it to have the entrance of the building and most of the personnel activities close to the parking. So that's where the activity is in the entrance and most of the fenestration. The building itself will be insulated metal panels. There'll be a light color and fairly reserved, I guess you could say. As an industrial building, it's a material that's very typical. So we felt it was appropriate for this. Evergreen is a clean operation. The spaces that the operation is done in are what's considered classified, so they have to meet certain regulations in terms of cleanliness. So the inside of the building has materials and clean walls that are used to be able to keep them clean. It has equipment that has stainless steel. So it's a very crisp and clean environment. We felt it was appropriate to represent that on the outside of the building because it's a high-tech, modern, clean operation. So that's the way we've set it up. The conversation I had with Mr. Hughes earlier today talked about the street elevation. As I said, we've positioned the building in order to make it as efficient as possible on the site. So we've put the lobby and the entrance to the building adjacent to the parking, which was located in the rear of the property. That leaves the real intense operations of the building in the back of the building, which in this case is at the street side. So there are no operations there that are appropriate to have windows in them. So we don't have any fenestration on the street side, but we feel that the signage that's on the building and the landscaping that we're proposing in front of the building gives the building a presence that's appropriate for that environment.
How about can we bring up the plan so you can just walk the board a little bit through it, very high level?
Oh, sure.
When you say the plan, you want the elevation or a floor plan?
Yes. Let's do the elevation, the floor plan.
Okay.
And that's a fire code issue that you'll work through.
Correct. Okay. Do we have that?
This is in the site plan document or the architectural plan document?
The
architectural
document.
Yeah, and sir, you just give a very brief overview of the architecturals and just point out the change that you and Ms. and Keenan agreed to, Mr. Hughes agreed to, and then I think we can open up to the board with questions.
This plan that you're showing, Charlie, is the same that was on file, right? You're just going to highlight the results of your conversation with Keenan. Is that correct?
I could do that. Yes, I think it's appropriate. There's two images here that might help explain this and be appropriate. In the plan, you can see the plan there to the right is.
Excuse me, can you identify what the plan, what the name of the plan is that we're referring to for the record?
This is the sheet that's entitled Floor Plans Furnishings. So this sheet shows furnishings that are used in the operations, as well as equipment that are part of the processing of the materials that are used. So
yeah, I think we need to go over the elevation.
The elevation, yeah. Can we move through the?
You're right. So if we go to sheet 3 of 3. So this is a very straightforward architectural elevation of the building. The street elevation is elevation number 1 on the sheet that's entitled exterior elevations. So as I described, the signage on the building is there at the top of the wall, and then there's simply 2 exit doors which are positioned appropriately for the internal operations of the building. I think while it wasn't submitted as part of the record, James, if James were to speak, the background of his setting will show you a rendering of the building in what we envision it to look like and what I discussed with Mr. Hughes earlier today.
I think that's what we want to see now. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I'm just speaking so that my background will come up, so I can also move to the side.
Move to the side, James. Thank you. I think we could.
We take this
off this. Okay, let's see.
Jeff, you're not going to be on the building, and Merrill's not either.
Go ahead, Mr. Cook. Walk away and just make some noise.
Okay, I'm just making some noise, and I'm moving to the side. So this is a street view, and gives an idea of what we're considering for planting, for landscaping in the front. And Charlie, I'm not sure if you want to say anything else, but I feel that I have to keep talking to keep the view up.
You actually do, but I'll keep talking with you, but you talk over me. So, Merrill, I think what we should do is we're going to mark that as probably A3, because that's actually what I think the board was looking
100%
to get attached to. So I think that's A3, Merrill, and we'll call that photo rendering of front of building. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that the same view that's on the cover sheet, A000 of the architectural plans?
To answer your question, Mike, no, that's one of the renderings. It's very close, but this view that you're looking at tonight shows the side of the building along the driveway. The elevation on the drawings gives you a more straight-on view of the front of the building there, as shown on the left of James, as well as the lobby, more kind of fenestrated side of the building, if you will, immediately adjacent to the parking lot.
All right, so let me try and make this simple and direct. A3, Mr. Cook, please make some noise.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. There we go. Just mumble. This exhibit is A3, and this is what I guess has been arrived at. So this is what the board should be deciding. And if the board likes this, I think we should treat this as the same as we treated it when we were doing redevelopment plans and the like. We'll make this part of the packet. And this is what they're actually going to build to, if in fact everybody agrees to it without any changes. And that way you have, you know exactly what you're buying into. And is there a difference in material on this, Charlie?
The difference there between the two sides of the building is simply a different color on the
Okay, that's
metal
fine.
panel.
And that is what is the same color as matches the two-story portion in the back. This is what was has been proposed. That's not a change.
No, that's not a change.
And that's right over Mr. Cook's left shoulder.
Correct. And if it would help, I have another background, which is the back of the building, if you'd like to see that.
I think they were more concerned about the front, Mr. Cook, but they'll figure out whether they have to ask you for that or not.
No, I think that's fine. The only other thing is, Charlie and or Mr. Hughes, can you just discuss what's changing to this look? Because obviously this rendering was done before the conversation.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is Keenan Hughes, board planner. So I did have a conversation with the architect. My only concern, it's a very nice building. It's going to be a great addition to the district. It's just that its primary facade faces the rear of the property to the parking area. And the facade facing the street, as you can see, is fairly simple and just contains the two egress doors. So I did speak with Mr. Yonzer. It was explained to me that adding fenestration here really isn't an option due to what's going on internal to the building in that area. It's predominantly storage space, it's mechanical areas, and a hallway, I think. So we're not looking to add any windows here. We talked about maybe some other ways to address the facade, none of which make a whole lot of sense. But I think what we can do is perhaps just slightly enhance the landscaping to help dress up the facade a bit more, even more than what you're seeing in this rendering, to be clear. Again, just to sort of break down what is really kind of an overly long blank facade along the street. Again, recognizing this is an industrial district, but you know, it's really an opportunity to enhance the area. So so that's where we ended up. To be clear, no changes to the architecture, but we'll work with the applicant to just enhance the landscaping program for the frontage of the building.
Perfect. Okay, so Mr. Disco, anything on the architecturals before we open it up? No? Okay, so then I'm going to go in order. I'm going to change it around. Marissa, any questions?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Aaron from Outer Space?
I'm good.
Aaron, you're good. Okay,
I'm
Mr.
good.
Brendel?
No, good.
Okay, Mr. Dombrowski?
No questions.
Mr. Huber?
Good.
Perfect. Mr. Barnett?
Very straightforward, no questions.
Yep, I have no other questions. Mrs. Kessel?
No questions.
Mr. Wishna?
No issues.
Jerry?
No, I'm all good.
Okay, so seeing none, at this point, Merrill, I think the board needs any other testimony. Is there anything else you want to offer before I open it up to the public?
No, I just want, well, you're going to go to the public and then through the letters to confirm that we've covered all the points that were in there. And I just want to make clear, so we don't have a variance. We are proposing with regard to the interior landscape requirement that we are going to make a contribution to the tree fund in lieu of those additional in order to allow us to keep the extra 3 parking spaces.
Merrill, the board will talk to that. Let's go through this. We'll take care of that all at the end.
Yeah.
You got it.
All right, so at this time, if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on this application, hold on, 3-2020. Pooh, we're going to go to the public portion if anyone raises their hand. The only thing is there's going to be 3 minutes for each member of the public if they have any concerns.
I see people logged in, but I do not see any hands or Q&A questions.
We'll give it one more second and then I'm going to close the public portion. All right, Pooh, there's no one else?
None.
Okay, seeing no one else, I'm going to close this to the public and remand it back to the board. A couple things of consideration. Obviously, one, if the board acts favorably, any approval would be conditioned on the perfection of the subdivision for the prior application, because without that perfected, this application can't move forward. So that would be one of the conditions that would be out there. Anyone of the board, I guess I can go back in order. It didn't sound like anyone has any final questions or any conditions. So I'll go back to Jerry. Any conditions that we want to add?
No, I don't want to add anything. Everything's fine.
Mr. Wishna, anything else to add?
One quick question, sorry, and I saw it in Disco's letter, but I don't think I heard anything about it in the testimony with respect to the stormwater. There was a mention of there's runoff to adjacent properties, and that the testimony, I think he was looking for some testimony to support why that was.
Yeah, I think they did resolve it already, Mr. Disco. Actually, we'll go to their engineer. Do you want to, Mr. Cook? Do you want to?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. I spoke with Michael about this. This is a major development, which means that we're responsible to reduce runoff rates onto any adjacent property as part of our design. I think what Michael was looking at was he was hoping that we had a storm sewer perhaps close by enough or deep enough that we could use it in Commerce. But the nearest storm sewer is about 400, 500 feet away. It's very shallow. And I told him basically discussed that there's no way for us to try to get runoff into the existing storm sewer, which we'll always try to do. This design doesn't change the existing drainage pattern in that in the existing condition, the vast bulk of all the runoff generated on the property goes directly towards the back. We're mimicking that same breakdown, but the underground detention system is meant, as you'll hear in all discharge related situations, it's meant to keep the post-development runoff rate, in this case below because of the reductions, but it keeps it below what was running off to the property in the existing conditions. So I think Mike was expressing some concerns. Can we possibly utilize that storm sewer system? But there was not a way to do it. And this does comply with the regulations. So, that's
Mike?
the best I can give to you.
Perfect. Mr. Disco?
Yes, Mr. Quinn's
satisfied?
testimony is accurate, and I'm satisfied. I will point out for the board that because of the introduction of the exhibit with the pervious pavers, that will require modification in the stormwater manual and also in the maintenance manual, because they do require maintenance.
Yeah, and that would be condition of approval anyway.
Right. Glenn does wonderful conditions that just should be included in.
Included. Okay. Ms. Kessel?
No question.
Yep, and I had no questions. Mr. Barnett, any final questions?
No, just a reminder to work out whatever the garbage situation will be.
Yep, that's another condition. Okay. Mr. Huber?
No, everything's taken care of.
Ms. Grabowski?
No questions.
Mr. Brendel?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Loeffler?
Just something quick. I'm just looking at Mr. Disco's notes, and he was talking about sidewalks along Commerce Street. And he said further discussion is warranted. Has that taken place?
That's for board discussion. So there are no sidewalks on Commerce, with the possible exception of the two corner properties at Route 22. So it is in the ordinance. You could request that the applicant install sidewalks, but then they would be the only one from between Hillside and Route 22 that would have them, and it doesn't seem to make sense. So that's what the discussion is. The board can obviously judge it as they feel.
Yeah, I looked at it. I went out there today because I had nothing better to do because I've been home all the time. And I don't see the permanent value of putting sidewalks in an area where there's not going to be the development of having sidewalks to connect to it. You basically have a sidewalk to nowhere. You'd have more pervious coverage when they're trying to get away from the impervious coverage. It's not a pedestrian traffic area. So that was my opinion. Mr. Disco, you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, again, you'd be 1 out of 50 properties or 100 properties in that area that would have it. That would be it. So it doesn't seem like there's unless Rich, as a council member, there's some conceptual sidewalk installation in that whole area to link it, I don't see the benefit of it.
Nope. Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up because it was mentioned in this report.
No, that was a good point. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay.
Marissa?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Perfect. Seeing none, I'm gonna would like to entertain a motion to approve application 3-2020. Glenn, if you want to read some of the conditions, the ones that I want to add in is that the applicant will work with the engineer on a disposal situation where they'll have a trash enclosure. 2, that this application is contingent on perfecting the original subdivision application that was before the board back in March. I know I signed the deed, so I know they're working through perfecting that application. Anything else, Glenn, you want to add in?
Yeah, I got a couple of things on the list, and Merrill, if I missed something, then just chime in. I'm not going to do them in any particular order. The resolution will have them in a better order. The sidewalk requirement under the ordinance is going to be waived. The enhanced landscaping along the front facade shall be subject to review and approval of the board planner, meaning Keenan has to do that. The dumpster area is going to be subject to review and approval of Michael. They're going to make a tree contribution in accordance with the ordinance, subject to final review and approval of Mike. I think, Merrill, you still need county planning board approval. The board is going to allow or to grant site plan exceptions for the aisle width, and it's going to go from the 24 as required down to the 20. The interim landscaping, 5% required. You're going to allow that to go down to the 1.1. Let's see, county planning board, I think I said, Merrill, if it's not proprietary, I would think that we ought to have a copy, at least just in the file, of any FDA or DEP approvals. And if you can do that, fine. If you can't, I understand you and I can talk about that offline. And then I think you have to make some revisions to the stormwater manual that'll be subject to review and approval of Michael.
Any other board, think there's any other condition? So seeing none, I would like to entertain a motion. For
Jeff, just 1 second.
Yeah.
Merrill, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think I'm just flipping through the reports. I had nothing else in my notes.
Well, it's going to be subject to you still having to, the reports are going to be referenced. It's going to be subject to you having satisfied the issues raised in the reports by Michael. But that'll cover it then. But I think we covered it too.
Right.
Okay. So I think Mr. Huber wants to make the motion. So I've seen him upside down a few times. Mr. Huber, you want to make the motion?
No, my wife will.
Okay, she can't, but go ahead.
Neil.
Oh, Sil, okay, go ahead, make the motion.
I'd like to make the motion to approve application 3-2020-S with all of the modifications that were made by Glenn.
Anyone want to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Huber, second. Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Spassky?
Yes.
Mr. Miniman Huber?
Yes.
Mr. Barnett?
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Laufer?
Yes.
Mr. Brendel?
Yes.
Ms. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel?
Yes.
And Chairman Tiger.
Yeah. Okay. Congratulations. Welcome to
Thank you
Springfield.
so much.
Thank you very
Before
much.
we hold on, Mr. Chairman, Merrill, how soon are you thinking of getting started?
Oh,
You have too much other stuff to do yet?
I
You
don't
wanna
know. Tell me what you mean. I mean, I
You
know.
want to waive receipt of the resolution?
Oh, do we? I get you. I'm going to ask the client. I'm going to. It would always be our preference to be able to move forward as quickly as possible. Does that? How does the county approval affect that? I assume we're getting no interest, but
You got to get it. That's a piece of paper that we need, so maybe it doesn't matter. We'll be meeting. I just didn't want to find out that we held you up, but you're still going to close. You have the approval. You didn't have any objectors, at least that stated anything on the record. So I don't suspect that you're going to have to worry about much of anything. The clock will run.
What's your anticipation for when you would have that?
June 1.
I bought jelly to put on my corn
June
muffins.
1.
It opened up.
Okay, I'm going to ask my client if there's any reason that they anticipate. Well, let me ask you a question. Can we ask you for that?
Yeah,
And
let's
then
go ahead.
we
We're
don't
gonna go ahead. I think
do
we're
it,
gonna
and
ask-
then if we don't need it because we're waiting for other things, then it is what it is.
Yes.
Of course.
Board's gonna, I don't see any objection from the board. I'm looking through, no one's jumping out. So we're gonna waive the reading of the resolution. We will do the resolution on June 1. You would proceed at your own risk if anything comes up or anyone objects. We'll adopt the resolution on June 1, probably virtually, and you can put it in the Star Ledger a couple days afterwards.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, members of the board.
Thank
Perfect. Seeing we don't have any other applications, I'm going to take this time again to open it up to members of the public for any and all questions and concerns that they have before this board. Apu, do we see anyone?
We have one moment. Let me allow him to talk.
To hold your towels. The towel cost the girls nothing, and towel closet would cost $150.
I believe it's the mayor, sir.
Lovely. Mr. Capides? You're on mute, Mr. Capides.
Size is perfect. And it's great for company.
I vote for adjournment.
We'll give it one more second to see if we can get the mayor on.
Looks like he accidentally logged off instead of unmuting.
All right. Well,
All right. That's it.
so seeing any more members of the public? All right,
Not at this time.
Seeing none, we'll, I'm going to close the matter to the public. For the board's perspective, our next meeting will be June 1st. We're working on a time. I think Jen will probably email out whether we want to stick with 5:36 or 6:30 because people have so forth. So I hear Mr. Huber yelling 6. We'll be back with the time so that way it's published. As of now, it will be virtually. We'll make a final decision on May 15th, whether it's virtually or in person. More than likely to be virtually. It will be I believe we have the 2 lots. We have a 2-lot subdivision. Okay, seeing none, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
To adjourn.
Okay, thanks everyone for adjourning.
Thank you.
Thank you.